Voiceover Social.
Hello, Mrs. B.
Hello, Rob B.
How are you?
Not bad, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's Friday afternoon. It's Friday afternoon. That's all you need to know.
You know what? You're going away next week, and I'm quite looking forward to having the telly to myself.
I'm going away next week, and I'm quite looking forward to sleeping in a big Travelodge bed by myself and not having you snoring beside me.
I mean, yes, we should probably say that it is for work, isn't it?
Oh, of course it's work. It's a studio tickling tour. So by the time this podcast is released, well, at the moment this podcast is released, I will be fast asleep in Crystal Palace Travelodge.
Yeah. How exciting.
There you go. It is. It's very exciting. Having just had a lovely takeaway and several pints of beer, probably. Okay, right. Anyway, what are we doing?
It's the VO social, Rob. We've got it's fairly quiet actually at the minute. I mean, we've got lots of socials going on. There's been quite a few that are happening. There's quite a few that have happened in the last few days. But there's one that I do want to give a shout out for, in that VO Social Brighton is back and active. Woo-hoo!
Hooray!
So we have a lovely new team. There's quite a few of them down there that are organising that group, and they have organised their first social in a while, which is happening on the 8th of May. So all the details are on the website for that one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fab. We'll tell you in a second about what our interview this month is. But before we do that, we're just going to mention very quickly that there is a panic room after the interview, as we quite often do. But just to give you a reminder of where we get our panic room questions from.
So, yes, so our Ask Us Anythings, which we hold regularly, they are free to attend, in case anybody's asking. We hold them online, and we changed the time of day so to try and make it accessible for people in various time zones. The next one we are holding is on Tuesday, the 13th of May at 5 p.m. That will be British summertime. On the website, it does explain all the other time zones. Well, not all of them, because there's a lot of them, but a few others.
Yeah, and we are recording those Ask Us Anything sessions, and if there is anything suitable to use within the podcast here, we use it in the podcast here, and that is where we are getting our panic rooms from. So if you wish to ask a question and have it used in a panic room, you could record as a little voice note or something in your studio and email us that to us at listen@thevosocial.com. Or you could actually have a discussion with us and ask us follow-up questions and all sorts by attending and Ask Us Anything.
Yeah, and we cover pretty much anything that the both of us talk about, anything to do with the voiceover industry. Obviously, Rob, you talk about studios and software, editing, production, demos, or the audio side of being a voiceover. Mm-hmm. Anything to do with promoting yourself, so branding, websites, marketing, all that kind of stuff I can help with. And generally speaking, because we're both slightly stubborn in this respect, if we don't know the answer to something, we will either know someone who does or find someone who does. So come along. It'd be nice to see some people.
So what have we got lined up for our interview this month?
This month we are talking to someone who probably needs little introduction in the UK. She is incredibly well known. She is the mighty Tanya Rich.
And for those outside the UK who have never heard of Tanya Rich, who is Tanya Rich?
She is celebrating her 40th year in voiceover this year. She is an absolute legend when it comes to voicing. She's still very active. She's still very much voicing. She is also a voiceover coach. We've known Tanya for quite some time, and it was so much fun getting to chat to her. She's always fun to chat to.
Indeed she is. So, yeah, she talks about her 40 years in voicing, the kind of stuff that she's got up to and how she got into it and all that kind of stuff. She talks about her coaching and her attitude to coaching. And she also talks about her disability and her attitude to her disability, which might come as a surprise to some people.
Yeah, it's a little known fact, one that she doesn't talk about much, which she explains. And it was really interesting talking to her.
It was, yes. So hopefully you'll enjoy that interview. And that's probably all we have to say now.
I think so.
So rather than sitting twiddling our thumbs in silence, we should probably
get on with the interview.
Get on with the bloody interview. Lovely to speak to Tanya Rich this month. Tanya, introduce yourself.
Hello,
Tanya Rich. I'm originally from the Midlands. I know you can tell by my accent, can't you? But I live in Bath. I've been a voice actor for 40 years this year, and I've been coaching voice for 30 years. But before that, I used to do the odd bit of drama coaching too. And that's just me, really. That's what I can say.
Happy anniversary.
Bye, thank you.
Birthdays is.
Thank you very much.
So
that's very
40
exciting.
40 years is a long time in any job, let alone something like voiceover. So how are you celebrating?
Oh, gosh, loads of things. So one of the things I'm really looking forward to is on the 17th of May, I'm giving a 5-hour workshop with really intense training alongside my right-hand woman, Alicia King, in person for the price of an hour's coaching with me.
Wow.
In fact, actually, it's £10 more if you're a RichCraft student, and it's £30 more if you're not, but it's still dirt cheap. And I'm going to do a lot of deep diving on all the things that people don't get right. Breathing, one of the main things. And then at the end of that day, which will be the middle of the afternoon, I've got the most wonderful cake lady who's going to make some amazing cakes and all my favourite flavours. And we've got champagne, the real stuff. And we're going to have a little party and we're going to play Pass the Parcel and things like that. And then they can all go and they can either go and they can go and do whatever they like. So, and a lot of people are coming over. And I think, that's what we're doing 17th of May. So we had 16 places only and we've got 6 left. So hopefully people will get the last 6 filled soon.
And whereabouts is that?
It's at this gorgeous house. It's called The Green. It's in a place called Trowbridge, which Trowbridge itself is like, people always think, it's a bit of a kind of an interesting town. But this is in the outskirts and it's a beautiful house. It's going to be a bed and breakfast soon, but it's not quite ready. And the people who own it have been doing it up for years. And I said, look, can I use these rooms? Obviously, I'm paying them for it. We're not, but can I use these rooms to bring people to the house and they can have a look at it? And they said yes, so that's what we're doing. Yeah, so it's very easy to find by road or rail. But I'm also going to do other things as well. I'm going to be giving away some mentoring sessions and I'm going to be interviewed about who is Tanya Rich, because a lot of people think they know who I am, but they don't really. Or they have an assumption of what I'm like. And that drives me mad. And and I'm going to do loads of things. I've got quite a few things lined up, but I'm just kind of working out the logistics. Throughout the whole year, I'm going to be doing things.
Ooh. Exciting.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
great. So 40 years ago, who was Tanya Rich in 1985?
Tanya Rich was a still punk, gothy girl with loads of chutzpah, confidence, always have, mainly due to my upbringing, really. I'm surrounded by professional musicians and people on the BBC and stuff all my life, so I had no problem. And I walked into my mum had done voiceover when she was an actor, and when it first started commercial radio, and she used to do a lot of stuff for Radio 4, Woman's Hour and stuff like that. So I used to get, believe it or not, I used to get really nervous to go on stage. So I'd be fine once I got on there, but I'd be in such a state before I got on there. And I'm quite a large character, not a person, but a character. And I'd never done television training and to video stuff. So my mum said, why don't you go and be a voice actor? Because you can be anything you like then. And I thought, actually, that really suits me. So I can look like I want, I can be like I want. So I did. I went along to Signal Radio in Stoke-on-Trent, where I was living at the time. And I walked into the reception. I went, hello, can I speak to production, I guess? And they said, oh, yeah, who do you want to see? I don't know, who's in production? I mean, And I looked kind of, at that stage, I was still influenced a bit by Adam Ant, so I probably had some like bits of bird bones or something in my hair and God knows what, I think it was black on the top and purple underneath and blue, I think, or something. And I always used to wear stripes. I love stripes, stripy trousers, biker boots, looking tough as old boots, so to speak. And then all of a sudden, they phoned through the studio, and then this guy came out, and it was this guy called Les Scott, who was a writer, and he'd interviewed me when I managed Discharge for a fanzine called Zigzag. He went, hello, Tanya, what are you doing here? I said, well, thought I might like try be a voiceover. He went, oh, come on through to the studio. So I did, and Les Woolen was there. And he said, who's this? Like looking at me like, oh, God. And he said, oh, this is Tanya. She's really great. Why don't you let her have a go? So they did. I said, all right, sit down. So I knew what headphones were because I'd done session singing, see? Right. So I thought, okay, I said, put the cans on, And they went, oh, she knows the lingo, get her. So anyway, they put me in that little studio and they gave me a script and I did it. And they just looked at me. And then Les Woolham said, have you done this before? And I went, no, but I've done like loads of session work and singing and quite a lot of acting as well, stage and stuff. And he said, okay. And then I did it again. And it was a shorter script. I remember I couldn't tell you what the scripts were because that would be really sad, wouldn't it? And basically, he said, well, you've got an inbuilt clock. And I did mishear him at first. I was like, what? And then he went, clock. I went, oh, thank you, sorry. And I went, okay. And he said, and you've got quite a nice voice. Faint praise. And I said, thank you. And he said, okay, we'll train you up. And that's what they did. And so for 2 years, I was the second voice. So they had a lady that worked there. She was their first voice. She was very RP. And then they had me. And in those days, you had to be much more RP than I am now. And in fact, I've just found loads of old cassettes and videos that we've just recorded. We've just put them all onto like MP3 and 4. Oh my goodness, I was so RP because you had to be, unless you were doing a character voice. And I worked for the second voice, so I got to work with all the male voices, of which mostly they were. And I got to learn lots of things about inflection because I was the voice that kept saying, really? Where's that development? That number again? And all this stuff. So that's what I spent 2 years doing. And then I made a show reel. 2 years to make a show reel, but enough to get me work everywhere else then.
That was obviously all commercial radio stuff.
Yeah.
What else did you get into? How long did it take you to start on the corporates and all that kind of stuff?
Not long at all, to be honest, because I'm very good at interpreting scripts naturally. I just see buzzwords. I just kind of, I don't know, I was obviously born to be a voice actor, right? I love it. So I would always read. And I read all my life. You know, I came from a family where we read books and we read aloud. And I did all the Lambda exams and right up to the top one, the licentiate, which is really hard to do. So I did all that. I did all the gold medals and I'd always in drama at school and stuff. So, yeah, I could read really anything. And once I learned the kind of the technique just by listening or just being advised, I got it right. I do remember one story, though. This is how I teach, you know, and I tell people about when you do things for medical. I remember my first medical, I couldn't tell you what it was for, but I remember being quite nervous because there was guys in the booth that were clearly doctors from a hospital and looking at me, just no humour. And I did this thing, and I remember, the only reason I remember this because the talkback came on, and the guy said to me, the producer said, were you impressed that there were millions of cells? Well, I was, right? I'm going, yeah, I really was. Like, he said, they're not. They know there's millions of cells. Oh, okay.
Ooh, brutal.
There I learned a big lesson. Like, don't make words for the trade sound like, ooh, that's exciting. But how did I get into corporate? Just going on the road, because once I got my show reel done, and you know, in the old days, it was so complex what you had to do. Basically, I just went out and I'd go to corporate, you know, I'd go to production houses on the way. I just learned, and then, because I never really had a mentor as such that pushed me, but I had people that gave me chances and then made me better. So, so going to the corporate thing was not a problem.
So when did you start and why did you start coaching?
Well, I'd always done, as I said, I'd taught a bit of drama and stuff. In about 1991, Greg Marsden and I decided to do like voiceover, introduction to voiceover. I can't remember how we advertised it now. Even he would, because he's got a brain that remembers everything. I don't. And we did it at a production house in Bristol, in Portland Square, where Galaxy used to be. Yeah, we used to do those on a Saturday, like 3 times a year, and make little cassettes for people and stuff like that, and just say, look, this is how you sound, and just teach them the basics. And then I kind of did the odd bit with people, but on the whole, I was just too busy voicing and going and still having to go into Soho a lot and all that kind of stuff. And then I just, well, if you want the honest truth, I got fed up with listening to terrible people saying that they were voiceovers. And I just thought, I want to change this. I'm going to change this. So I started a company in 2011 with Peter Dixon called Ultra Voice. That was 4 times a year. We did that in London. And then Peter decided he wanted to go and make a lot more money than he would make with little old me. So he went off to do gravy. And I decided I was going to change the name. And I just got the inspiration to call it RichCraft. And I've been building my base ever since. But the thing is, my students have to remember, I think this is why people like to work with me, I'm not a coach that does a bit of voicing. I'm not a coach that's never done any voicing. I am a voice actor that does a bit of coaching. And the RichCraft name is bigger because obviously I have 3 other coaches. I have Alicia King, who I've personally trained, and she's fab, Greg Marsden and Bob Lawrence. And they are great coaches and directors. And that's why when people think, you know, all the RichCraft stuff's going on, I coach 3 days a week, 2 students a day, or I make a show reel and 1 student, and that is it. Very rarely do I go outside of that because I haven't got the time.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. I know people go, really? Yes, really.
I think there's a huge value in somebody, and certainly when I was a student doing design, my tutors that were the best tutors by far were the ones who were working.
Yeah.
And the ones that were in the industry, they understand what was going on, they could see the changes, they could feel it because it was their lives as well.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's great that you're still doing it, because I think it is so important to giving an honest show of actually what the industry is really like. How do you know that if you're not in it? I never understand that.
The thing is, the foundations I've got from being that voiceover in 1985 to now, the directors that I had that were so tough. I mean, nowadays, I don't think people would cope with it, you know. I mean, my students would, because I make them hard. One of the things I feel very strongly about is if you book somebody from a showreel, they have to deliver everything and more than on that showreel. And they have to know how to do it. They have to know what 3 on the bounce is, and another 3, and another 3, and pick up a word that doesn't come in hard and all this. They have to know all that stuff.
One thing that I've heard you mention more than one occasion is breathing through your arse. What exactly do you mean by that, and why is it important?
I'll tell you why it's important. As you know, in the old days, we did everything to tape. And as you know, Rob, because you've been in the industry a long time, if you had a voiceover that went, like they were having an asthma attack, no disrespect to anyone's asthma, by the way, because, you know. But if you had a really bad breathing, the poor engineer had to stop, get the tape, put it on the block, splice it, cut it with a razor blade, put it back together, and look at you balefully, like, and then, and I found, as I worked, I'd think, I wonder what happened to X. Yeah, well, they couldn't breathe properly, and we had to keep cutting out all the breaths. And it's not like now, like you can do it like that.
Yeah.
And so very quickly, I learned from listening and watching the best things and working on my own techniques on how to make my breathing as silent and quick as possible, what to do. And so I broke, with the coaching side, I broke everything down. So breathing through your arse basically means breathing so quietly that actually, the breaths can be removed, but they're literally, I mean, on the sound wave, they're minuscule. Sure. But I also teach my students, and I do this myself, how to breathe silently under words. Okay. Yes. Like the Jacques Cousteau voicing.
I was going to say, surely having a musical background has influenced that technique, surely.
Absolutely. And the quieter they are, it's the better it is. And the thing is, it's gorgeous to hear because they can flow. You see, I always know when I get a new client, the type of voices that they've been used to working with. When they say to me, would you like to do it line by line? I have to stop myself saying, are you serious? I go, well, I can, but I tell you what, can I just do one all the way through just for your kind of levels and stuff? Is that okay? Because I make it feel like it's their idea then, right?
Yeah.
And they always go, yeah, sure. Of course, I do it. And you literally hear silence. And I had one London agency and they came back on the talkback and went, excuse me, do you actually breathe? I went, yes, I am human. And they said, that's incredible. And I said, so would you like, I always say to them, so would you like me to do it line by line? Now they go, no, you're fine, like this. And I can imagine the engineer going, yes. So if you can't read from top to bottom, it's okay doing a pickup and the end line on the bounce and all that. But if you can't read, how do you get the feel of a piece? How do you understand timing, nuance? Yeah. You need to be able to read to time.
It is very well known on various social media platforms and all the rest of it that you were there at the beginning. You were an original punk, and then you took on the managing of this band. Just tell us a little bit about that and what that taught you and the skills that you learned in that totally different career that you brought into voicing with you.
Well, basically, I met this group of boys.
Well,
I was working in the coolest record shop in town, right?
Nice.
And I was a punk. I got this lad who came running in the shop, and he literally skidded to a halt. And he went, "You're a punk." I went, "Yeah," because I could always sneer. And he ran off, and he came running back up the hill with all these lads, and they came out, and I was it was like Gunfight at the OK Corral, that standoff. Yeah, we're a band. Well, I used to sit on Val Doonican and Engelbert Humperdinck's knee as a child. I've met famous people, and I thought, okay. I said, are you? I said, so you got any gigs then? No, not yet. Right. Got a manager? No. Okay. What's your name? Discharge. That was the rudest word they could think of. They deny this now, but it's actually the truth. And I said, do you want me to manage you then? They went, Yeah, all right then. So that was it. So in I stormed, got them gigs, got them on with a Clash, had a row with Mick Jones on the stage, not in front of I'm not in the gig. Got them on with the Damned, got them on with the Ruts, got Sham 69's people to walk a mile to come and watch them rehearsing to put them on as well. You know, got them their first tour, got them their record deal, loads of stuff. So that all that stuff. And what did it teach me? Well, it taught me that I was really good at that old razzle-dazzle, that real showbiz thing. I was not frightened of anybody, or if I was, they never knew it, which really held me in good stead as a voice actor. And that I think very quickly, right? So one day, a Discharge gig was booked and then the venue cancelled. So I literally ran, because in those days, although I wasn't well, I was a lot more mobile than I am now, ran down the road to a local pub called The Vine and said, look, can you put Discharge on tonight? The audience will drink your bar dry. Put them on. So they did, and they ran out of beer. I mean, and it was like what everybody talks even now in Stoke-on-Trent that remember, that gig at the Vine, that was incredible. So that taught me really to be tough, not to be afraid of anybody, and not to be frightened to ask for what you want.
So you mentioned very briefly then, you're not as mobile now as you are then. Do you want to elaborate on that?
So when I was 5, I was very lucky that my modelling career was cut short, literally, because I got psoriasis, which is horrible, horrible skin disease. It made my life a bit of a hell. That also made me very tough. That taught me how to physically fight and to mentally fight. And then I got the arthritis at 14. Skin cleared up at 20, so that's good. But I got psoriatic arthropathy, which is horrible. It's worse in a way than...
Incredibly young.
Yeah, 14, yeah. I had my first surgery at 16, sorry. Yeah, it's kind of like rheumatoid, but a bit worse because it affects all the tendons, and it can also affect any joint in your body. So you can get it in your eyes, you can get it in your heart, you can get it anywhere. Wow. And so one of the reasons my mum thought voiceover would be good for me was because when you've got really bad arthritis in every joint of your body practically, standing up for a long time is quite difficult. And also perhaps going on stage, being on a film set for a long time would be quite hard for me because obviously the fatigue when I was young was hardly anything. But now it's horrendous. And because of the medications have changed. So the medications you get now, had I been given those, if they'd have been available, I wouldn't be as bad as I am now. But because they weren't available, I am. So as the years have progressed, my joints have got worse and worse. I've got secondary osteo. So my knees are literally bone on bone. I have no spaces. How I'm walking, as my surgeon says, is a miracle. But I won't have a new knee because I can't afford to never walk properly again. And also, I can't be off work that long. I go mad. So I have severe arthritis. I'm on major medication, 2 kinds of chemo. I get incredibly fatigued. And I'm supposed to go and have a rest every day. Yeah, like that ever happens. And it's just incredibly wearing. And there's lots of things I can't do. So if ever you see me out with Alicia, for example, you might think, why is Tanya never carrying her own bags? Like, does she think she's the queen? Well, yes, I do. No, I do that because I can't do things. I can't lift things properly. I can't carry heavy things. I can carry a handbag, that's about it, like the queen. I just can't do things, and I cannot. There's lots of things, even bending over. Like if I bent down, I think, I'll just do that bit, pick something off the floor. I'm like, then my breathing will be bad, and so I'm a bit crap really physically, but nothing wrong mentally.
And how has that impacted your voiceover career?
I think I kept it to myself. I mean, people who've known me so long was shocked that they found out about it. They said, well, I never had a clue. I never had no idea you were like, I'd have in the 90s, I'd be on the road, I'd be driving, and I'd have knees like footballs. Waiting, and I'd just be going home and then going the next week. I'd take 2 days off work to go have my knees drained. And I just didn't talk about it. So people were really shocked. So it's affected me because it's made me, I don't define myself by my illness. That's not who I am. But it has made me tough because, you get teased at school if you've got psoriasis. Believe me, people don't like having spotty kids all around them. And so that taught me to be tough. And then the voiceover industry is tough. And the punk industry, so I've got those layers. I'm like a lasagna of toughness, but also between the layers is like a big heart and kindness. And I'm very emotional. I mean, I really care. My students do something. They tell me sometimes I'm like, I'm so crying over them, because I'm so proud of them. So it's impacted my career a lot. But it's great because in this booth I've got, I can stand up. And I do sometimes have to do like 2-hour animations things standing up. And I am literally, they can't see, I'm literally moving from knee to knee. I've even had sticks in here when I've been balancing on a stick. You'll see pictures of me online, and if you see my arms behind my back, it's because I'm hiding my sticks. Not because I'm hiding something in my pocket like, oh, I'm naughty. No, it's usually sticks because I just don't want people to see me on sticks.
I think people are, I'm going to say, more forgiving of ailments these days, but I think you're very right in that back in the day, there would have been a lot less forgiving. And, also because you're a woman with ailments, it would have counted doubly against you.
Correct.
And so it's natural and normal that you would still really be kind of hiding a lot of that stuff and not letting on that, things aren't as good as they could be.
Well, the thing is, and I don't know if it's in your business, Helen, but it's certainly in the audio business. I have a saying, and I always say it to my students, nobody cares, work harder. Now, that sounds really harsh, but the fact of the matter is, when you're asked how you are by a producer or a client, the answer is always fine. It doesn't matter. If you can't, once comes inside your booth, whatever your booth may be, it could be a corner of your kitchen, whatever you've got, leave all the other stuff outside. It's called voice acting. Yeah, we have to be constantly acting. And yes, it's a stress. And yes, it does affect maybe your mental health to a degree. You can be in a terrible place. And as long as you can still talk and read, the answer has to be fine. And hear, obviously. So if it's somebody I really know well, once we've got the job done, we've got time for a chat. Say it was with Rob, and Rob said, how are you today? When we've done the job, obviously I wouldn't waste his time. Well, to be honest, Rob, my bloody knees are killing me today. I could say that to Rob or Eddie or somebody I know really well. I wouldn't say it ever to a client or somebody I don't know well. They don't care really, because we say, don't we, how are you? Great, fine. Nobody cares. They don't want to hear your story. And so now it seems to me that people will use that as an excuse. Please give me this award because actually I've got this illness, but I've managed to voice a character. Well, I've been doing that for years, and at the end of the day, you should get it because you're a great character voice, not because they feel sorry for you because you're ill. And also because, Rob, I've seen this in studios. If a voice doesn't perform on the day, but they've gone in with a bad attitude or they've gone in moaning or they've gone in something, that people say, well, we're not using them again. They weren't very good today. And that's what you've got to remember. And that still happens.
Oh, absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with you. People work with who they like and they enjoy working with. And if the easier you can make your client's life, the better. Exactly.
And that's what I do. I always go the extra mile. It doesn't matter if my feet are in an ice bucket or my, I got up today from this chair and my tendon in my groin, which doesn't normally have a twang. And I was like, going out the booth, dragging my leg, and then it'll just snap back. Sometimes I'll go to write something and my elbow will lock and I'll just, that's a bit painful. But I wouldn't say that to a client. If they heard me go, they'd say, what's that? I'd say, I don't know. Maybe I must need to get this chair fixed. I wouldn't go, well, my elbow's just locked and I've got arthritis. I'm not going to do that, am I?
Yeah. I've got 1.5 final questions.
Oh, come on then.
1.5?
It's 2 questions, but they are related to each other. So from the top of your 40-year mountain, where do you see the future of VO and any top tips that you would have for people who are getting into the industry?
I see the future of VO like this. If you are very average or don't know what you're doing, haven't had training, think it's a hobby, think it's a game, and you're worried about AI replacing you, it's possible it will. But until AI can feel, understand, nuance, subtlety, pause, can get inside a script and bring it alive properly, I think the better voices are going to be safe for a while until the technology really gets super. But how it's going to do that, I don't know. I think what I'd really like to see is that clients not putting up with terrible voices. There are pay-to-play sites, I'm not going to mention any names, when you see on there a national buyout for a television commercial for a national brand and they're paying the voiceover £500. Now, we know that agencies are always going to skim on the top. That's called commerce. It's business. We understand that. But if a client thinks that, and when you hear the voice they've got a £500 voice, right? And if you think, how can they have convinced that client that that voice is suitable? That's what baffles me. You know, how do you get somebody that sounds they've just left school talking about a cruise that costs 10 grand a person and the people in the cruise are grey hair and old? Why are they casting people wrongly? Why? Because they've got them cheap? I would like to see clients actually putting their foot down with agencies and go, no, that's not the right voice for this product. I want somebody that sounds like this. So that's part of my thing. And I think my advice to people wanting to be voices, ever more so than it is so competitive. And even though average voices or people that really aren't very good do get jobs, I would very much doubt if they get repeat business. And repeat business is the lifeblood for anybody in creatives. So that's what you need. You know, some of my clients I've kept for 30 odd years. And the only reason I haven't kept them for 40 years is that they didn't exist then.
Yeah, it is so true. And you are not the first person to mention it. But it is easier and it's less energy in terms of marketing. And actually, it's really nice working with people that you know well.
And that can do
you know better.
Because that's the other thing, though. Sometimes
it's great having a relationship with them.
Yeah, and that is important. But what should never confuse for me, like, I might know somebody that's a voiceover friend of mine that might be, or not a voice friend, but somebody I know who's really lovely. They might be the loveliest person. They might, be super. But are they a particularly good voice anymore? Or can they do this? Or have they done that? I won't recommend somebody just because they might. I mean, I want people that I like and are good to get the job.
Yeah.
Sure. But if somebody's a bit of a shit to work with, but they're really good at their job, and I know that, I would recommend them. I wouldn't say, oh, they're such a lovely person. I would just say this person can do that job extremely well. You don't have to like somebody, but it doesn't half help. If they're good and you like them, bonus. Because most people do try to be pretty nice, but I don't know. I think you just don't want to take any BS from people. I think the whole business now is so full of bull. Anybody can be a voiceover. No, they can't. Helping 1 million people find their voice potential. Yeah, I could find somebody in my butcher's shop and tell them how to say something and they'd be finding their potential. And that's as far as it would go. You know, there's so much rubbish talked. I can't bear it. And it doesn't make me popular, but I've never cared about being popular, so it's all right.
Panic room. This one's for Rob. So I've been doing this for a little bit now, and I've never used plugins. And I hear people talking about plugins, and it's gotten to the point where I'm too afraid to ask now. So I'm going to ask now.
Okay.
Like, what are they? Do I need them? And if it's such a huge topic, where can I learn more about them?
Okay. So what plugins are basically they are just processes and things you can do to your sound. So when you record something, it's going to be there in your editor or DAW, whatever you're using. And if you just edit that, convert it to MP3 or keep it as a WAV and then send that off to your client, you have not used any plugins. So if you have the same situation and if you'll have a look at in a menu somewhere, it'll say effects, and then you'll get things like compressors and EQs and reverberation and delays and things like that. Those are all sound effects that we can add to manipulate the audio. They are all plugins.
All right. Okay.
So you get, broadly speaking, I mean, you can divide these things up into a million different ways of dividing things up. But broadly speaking, in terms of this, you're going to have native plugins and third-party plugins. So the native plugins are the ones that come with your piece of software.
Yeah, so I've used things like the compressor, the normalization, EQ, stuff like that.
So you have used plugins.
Right, okay.
Okay. But the flip side of that is that the third-party plugins are things which other software company makers make, and you buy them in, and you buy a different compressor for your DAW or editor, a different EQ, a different reverb, whatever. Most of the DAWs and editors and things that we use as voiceovers all come with a pretty good package of plugins native, so there isn't a massive need to go out and buy extra bits. The exception to that, really, I think, is Audacity, which kind of, and to a degree, Twisted Wave as well. And those do come with some plugins, but they kind of come with your operating system more than they come with the software. So you'll find that the list of plugins that people have when they haven't bought third-party plugins can be quite different if they're using one of those two pieces of software, particularly Audacity. So, you can never entirely take that for granted. Also, some of the Audacity plugins have been a bit ropey. They've recently upgraded their compressor. Lots of Audacity users don't like it because it now works like a proper compressor does, not like the Audacity one used to, because it was always awful. But anyway, so the third-party plugins, you're going to buy just things which either just look a little bit different and so they make a little bit more sense to you, or there are a lot of plugins which are software emulations of vintage classic pieces of hardware. A lot of these things we buy because they imbue a certain sound onto the audio that we're kind of working on. So, we'll have a nice valve compressor sound when we've never seen a valve in our lives or whatever it is. And then there are the other utilities which we can buy, things like you've probably heard people talking about RX Isotope.
Yeah.
Which don't.
I think there was a sale on recently, and
they've always got sales on. They've always got sales on, yeah. But things like that are,
I need it.
A different kind of type of plugin, if you like, because it's not that kind of hardware emulation, not just a normal audio processing thing. Those things are actually designed specifically for kind of audio restoration and noise reduction and stuff like that. Okay. So, it is a little bit different, but there's lots and lots of different kind of utilities and things like that, which we can get as plugins, as third-party plugins. We don't have to. Some things are geared more towards certain types of work. So, for example, if you are submitting things for broadcast all the time, a lot of plugins, which are a lot of the native metering plugins, don't analyze audio accurately enough to submit them for broadcast. So we'd need to get something third-party which would do the job for us. But a lot of that kind of stuff isn't actually plugins as such. It's just a different audio utility that we'd open the audio in. But but that's basically what a plugin is and what it does.
All right, thanks.
You've been listening to the VoiceOver Social podcast, hosted by Rob B and Helen B from BEE.
Sponsored by BEE.
VoiceOver Social.
Thank you to our guest,
Tanya Rich at tanyarich.co.uk.
In-person socials coming up over the next couple of months. Helsinki on Wednesday the 2nd of April, Hearts, Beds and Books in Hemel Hempstead on Friday the 4th of April, Manchester on Saturday the 12th of April, the Pint and Rabbit online social on Thursday the 17th of April, the reinvigorated Brighton social on Thursday the 8th of May, and the Belfast social on Saturday the 7th of June.
All audio production by Rob B.
Please like, subscribe and leave a review to help more voiceover people find us.
And if you want to email us, it's listen@thevosocial.com.
See you next month.
The VoiceOver Social.